you talked about Ephesians 6:12. You go back one chapter, Ephesians 5:11. It says this, take no part in unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. And interestingly, in verse 12, it says, for it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. And man, is that true with everything that's come to light here.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us. I have a very, very special guest. I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite YouTubers out there. He's a filmmaker, podcaster, YouTuber, and frankly, he's a musician too, and one heck of a great guy. It's Gonz Shimura. His YouTube channel is FaceLikeTheSun, and it's my great honor to have him here. Gonz, how are you?
Good. How are you, Sean?
Well, I'm just terrific, and I really, really do thank you for joining us. You really are one of my favorite YouTubers out there. And I should say for the audience, Gonz is a heck of a documentary filmmaker too. Age of Deceit 2. He's made some really terrific documentaries that make me feel a little ill at ease about my own talents. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, gosh.
As in the days of Noah, End Times Prophecy, Fallen Angels. I'll put a link to Gonz's channel here in the more info section. You guys are going to want to subscribe. Gonz, I just wanted to start by asking you this. Are you seeing, as I think I'm seeing, more and more evidence of the elite, the people that have been running the world up to this point, more and more evidence of their spiritual beliefs, which are very negative, coming into full view?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the biblical precedence that's set is that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And the fact that we sit here and everything is against the flesh, everything is against each other. That's the core of the deception. And it doesn't start with, just a random person. It starts with an idea that is disseminated from the top. And those that have access to and control of the levers of society, they have been fed spiritual belief systems that shape their worldview, and that shapes their decision making. And obviously, it's it's manifesting itself quite literally. And it's interesting to see all this because, we've been talking about Satanism at the top. I've talked to a lot of pastors and discussed these things or tried to bring them up. And a lot of times, more your mainline pastors will sort of just kind of, we don't have any proof. We don't know that for sure, that kind of thing. And they'll just kind of ignore it. And when this kind of stuff comes out, it's hard to ignore. And I think it is obvious. We are seeing more of it. And for us, it's kind of like, yeah, we've been saying that for a long time. I think for the public, they're having a hard time with it. I don't think they've quite come to grips with it. And I think it's a time for us to sort of, not make fun of the people freaking out, but sort of guide them, assist them, be a guiding hand, as your channel has really been. And I really appreciated all the stuff you've done on SGT Report during the elections. It helped me kind of wade through some of the nonsense and keep a level-headedness about the whole thing. So does that kind of answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, it does. And I think we should cite some specific examples because, one of the things that I think so many of us found absolutely shocking beyond belief was this Gothard Tunnel opening ceremony, this very, very dark occult ceremony that the powers that be spent more than $8 million, not on the tunnel, on the ceremony. And the ceremony told us some very specific things about these people's belief systems, didn't it?
Yeah. And this is, I have a video called CERN Watch. It's a mini documentary. I talk about the connections with NASA, CERN, and the Gothard Satanic ceremony. And this is a tunnel that they created. It's the tunnel itself, there's a whole history there, whatever. But the ritual itself was just, it's hard to believe when you watch the RT full, broadcast. It's like a 6 or 7 hour broadcast, and it goes through and it shows, people showing up. They show up in helicopters, and they're, being kind of limoed into this area where they're walking through, and you have Grand Master with a staff with a goat head on it, and one of the main characters of the whole thing was a goat character, and it is blatant paganism, which you can break down into a basic Satanism. And let me just say this also, and this is something myself and my co-host Basil discussed on Canary Cry News Talk, which you can check out, canarycrynewstalk.com. But the word Satanism or satanic, it's kind of been sensationalized in a way I think used too hastily by sort of the right side or the alt right or whatever when some of this stuff came out, because when you look at the elite themselves, or when you look at Abramovich herself, her saying no, it has nothing to do with Satanism, and we kind of mocked that, right? We were like, oh no, what are you talking about? And we're talking about sorry, I shifted gears here
No, that's right.
from the Gotha tunnel, but
Marina Abramovich, right?
yeah, the one that
Connections to Podesta, and we'll get
the
into that.
spirit cooking and all that, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
But for her, it isn't Satanism proper. It's more of this idea, and that's where kind of the deceptions are, and that's where the different worldviews sort of become evident. Because for her, it's sort of this spiritual thing. She talked about it. It was a spiritual thing. It's spiritual. Well, yeah, I mean, there's when there's blood, and when there's things that are a little bit more abominable. There's a definite spiritual component to it, and the fact that they believe that it's something good, that something positive can come from that. That's where sort of, I think for a lot of us, we kind of look at it morally and think this is just wrong. But that kind of strikes at the core of the spiritual battle here, and it goes way beyond all the things happening and manifesting. But surely we are seeing just a blatant just outpouring of this stuff to the public. And I think a lot of it has to do with the internet information age too. It's almost like they can't really deny it or hide it. I think the internet, YouTube has been a big part of that in exposing it. And I think, they're just kind of like, well, it's already out there. People know, so might as well. And at the same time, I think a lot of it is so shocking that people can't absorb it really, or they just, there's this veneer that it's art. It's just artistic. Ultimately, if you break it down, anything that's art or anything that's media, including this broadcast, including all our YouTube channels, has a underlying philosophical worldview that it is pushing in a sense. It's our job to be transparent about what that message is. And a lot of times it's forced, these darker sides to also be transparent with it. And that's why I think we're seeing all of it just come to the surface here.
Yeah, the spiritual, the cover story they like to use is that it's art. It's artistic expression. And the deeper you dig, what you find is, and I just sent you a link to this because it's shocking. I saw this over at vigilancecitizen.com, and it's the Vogue Ukraine cover with Marina Abramovich. And not only is she, and this is the picture so many of us have seen, is she holding this gutted goat's head
Right.
inside the magazine. Well, first of all, I should say on the cover, she is standing with a little girl who's dressed in red and has very severe, almost demonic, satanic-looking makeup on. And then inside the magazine, you have Marina standing with occult hand gestures over a model on what essentially looks like a slab you'd put a dead body on. And the model has her inner body parts exposed, all her guts exposed. And these people appear to be into not only pedophilia, but into some form of cannibalism, I think. And if you look at a lot of these parties that Marina has held or where she has been as a guest or a featured quote-unquote performer, she has these what appear to be dead bodies that are cakes, and then the guests partake in cutting the bodies and eating the cake. It's really, really disgusting, spooky stuff for those of us who are spiritually wired correctly, isn't it, Gonz?
Yeah, and gosh, it's so hard to see. It's so disheartening almost because someone like Abramovich, she is under a spiritual deception. She's a victim to some of this stuff that has been ongoing for centuries. The spiritual war has been going on forever, and it's taken different shapes and forms. But there's always been this dark side to it, and the people have fallen victim. That's why I called the documentaries that I've made "Age of Deceit," because this deception it's not just that the people are being deceived by the elite. Yes, that's one level of it, but the elite themselves are under a heavy deception that is spiritual. And again, it goes back to worldview, it goes back to ideologies, the realm of ideas, and the realm of the mind. And that's kind of where the spiritual world manifests itself into our world. So, when you look at it in that terms, yeah, there's something that's not right, that's not wired correctly, and this infection, it really is an infection, and we call it sin, and I mean it's verified to a sense here. It's a corruption, it's a decay that that causes this sort of thing, and it's the same spirit that is behind the sort of nefarious illegal activities and the pedophilia, all that stuff. It's a guiding force that's behind the scenes. It's a common hand, and that's why I think it's really interesting when you look at it, because we're so fixated, and not a bad thing, but we're fixated on the human structures, the human hierarchy of how all this stuff works with the elite, the deep state. And obviously there are people much higher in places that are much higher power, that have the leverage. But it feels like, and this is just a sort of an intuition kind of thing for me, but at the top, this throne, there is this throne, and there have been folks along the way who have sort of captured pieces of it, in a certain sense, kings of the past and things like that, and I think there is this sort of internal race to be the one to harness some of that power, that ultimate power, and I think what we're seeing with a lot of these elite, this generation of elite, with the Soroses and all this stuff, they dedicated their lives to pursuing that position of power, and it's interesting to see this generation pass on, because they sort of, they achieved it to a point, but the corruption was so deep that they just die, just lost men. And hopefully, I mean, their salvation is between them and God, but to the outside world, it's like, man, you really sold out your soul to just unprecedented evil, and humanity suffers from it, So, it's a difficult thing to do, but when you start looking at the bigger picture, when you start digging behind the scenes to all the human hierarchy, there is a definite spiritual hierarchy that's at play. And they're sort of dangling, the devil dangling the carrot in front of humanity, that there's this elusive power that you can have ultimately. And this is the same temptation that was given to Jesus. If you go through the temptations of Jesus, the devil offering him all the kingdoms of the world if he would only bow to the devil. But of course he rebuked that. And that's what we ought to do in the process of spreading light and truth into the world. So, it's just a crazy time we live in, because a lot of this stuff is being verified out in public.
Yeah, and I think it's divine intervention. I don't think that what's happening now, because of WikiLeaks, because of the alternative news media that's covering these stories and getting them out there for the world, I don't think this could happen without some measure of divine intervention, because, for most of my life, Gonz, all of this stuff has been hidden in the shadows. I mean, still to this day, most of my friends, neighbors, and colleagues don't know what a central bank is or who runs it. And when you're talking about those in power being spiritually misled or fooled, what comes to mind for me is their hubris. It reminds me of the Tower of Babel, and the city of London, in fact, where the Rothschild headquarters is on Threadneedle Street. I mean, they just openly mock God, and
Right.
And I think that's the part that is now becoming evident for anyone with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. I want to ask you about CERN. You've spoken so much with Anthony Patch, so we'll get there. But just getting back to this Marina Abramovich topic in spirit cooking, I wonder, you said she's a victim, and I wonder if she's a victim or a predator, because at the highest levels, these people with these types of belief systems who cling to them
Right.
so
Yeah.
thoroughly, they're predators, and they prey
Yeah.
on children, and they prey on others, and they're trying to influence the world with this dark satanic belief system. Again, going back to this Vigilant Citizen news story here, we see Marina embracing Jay-Z. We see a picture of Marina with Lady Gaga. And then what do we see? Jay-Z comes out with an Illuminati clothing line, and Lady Gaga openly mocks Jesus and Christian beliefs and does satanic rituals in her performances on stage, and bathes in blood at the MTV Music Awards. This is really insidious, but I think people are waking up to it because of WikiLeaks and the Podesta Clinton emails.
Yeah, absolutely. There's again, there is a positive side to this that I think most people don't focus on, and you mentioned it's kind of the spiritual angle of it. There is a large group of people, underground wilderness, if you want to call it, a church that exists kind of online, loosely, just a community of people who are not getting spiritually fed at your local church, or your just your basic sort of church family or whatever you have going on. it's just very lukewarm. And the internet has allowed a lot of this truthful information come out, and it has, ironically, maybe to the enemy, strengthened the faith of a lot of people. And there has been this sort of ramping up of prayer, and I know a lot of people were praying for some kind of good to come out of these elections. And whatever you think of Trump, and we can get into whether the whole thing is a bigger conspiracy behind the conspiracy kind of thing, which I've heard more so now that Trump has taken essentially the office. Not yet, but
Well, I just want to say one thing about that. The conspiracy behind the conspiracy. What I've been saying about Trump versus Clinton is that we know who Clinton is. We know who the Clintons are, and we know who the Podestas are, the Podesta brothers. So many links to this pedophile network. And again, we should probably spend a half hour talking about Comet Ping Pong and the Podesta brothers and spirit cooking and really flush that out for people. But I just say this. We know who Clinton was, and it was going to be more of the same corruption. She's
right.
a friend of the Rothschilds, supported by the Rothschilds. Rothschilds picked for president. And with Trump, if he does the things he says he will do, then maybe we have a brighter future. But I've made the point, Gonz, we don't know what lies in the man's heart.
Right,
We're going to have
right.
to see what he does. But I just think more of the same with Hillary
Right.
Clinton would have been the death of this country because she's so fully 100% corrupt.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. But it's this idea that the church, there's this underground church that prayed about this, and really, I think they made a difference in sort of getting this stuff out there. And because the believers, the church, the underground church, if you want to call it that, their sort of spiritual strength, if you will, is growing. Our prayer is more powerful now, I think, because we understand these things. Now the enemy has to ramp up because they understand that there is this war going on, this spiritual battle, and they have to be more bold. So it's kind of it takes on this new form, this new level of spiritual warfare that I think is different because of the internet, because of the information age and the explosion of everything. It's just a new form, and I don't know that your local church is ready to deal with this kind of stuff, and evidently they're not, because it doesn't seem like there's a big strong move towards any kind of exposure or understanding these topics. Although, again, more people independently, I think, are waking up to the truth.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is hopeful, though, about the WikiLeaks emails, well, actually, one of the things that I think is becoming really evident to everybody on the left and the right is the fact that the media is so 100% corrupt and in bed with the establishment that they won't report on the hardcore crimes. They won't report on the DC pedophilia rings. They'll cover it up, and they've done a great job covering it up, going all the way back to the Franklin cover-up. And the mainstream media is complicit with this ruling elite. And these Podesta emails suggest that the ruling elite are into very, very dark, very satanic things, including child trafficking and pedophilia. And I want to play this for you because I think this is part of a larger agenda, which maybe Trump will be able to curb a little bit with some constitutional Supreme Court appointees. But let me play this for folks. If they think this is all coming out of nowhere just because of WikiLeaks, I want to remind people that on June 30th, 2015, Tom DeLay said that the Justice Department of the United States wants to legalize 12 perversions. 12 perversions. And I'll play this soundbite. This is a conversation between Steve Maltzberg and Tom DeLay. Here it comes.
Are you going to go after their tax exempt status? And the Solicitor General said that's a conversation we will need to have.
Well, we've already found a secret memo coming out of the Justice Department. They're now going to go after 12 new perversions, things like bestiality, polygamy, having sex with little boys and making that legal.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there. Could you hear that, Gonz?
I can, yeah.
Now, what's so disturbing about that, you guys, is that now because of the WikiLeaks Podesta emails, we see names like Andrew Klein, owner of Uptown Pizza LLC, otherwise known as Besta Pizza, which has a logo which is widely known and recognized by law enforcement as being a pedophilic symbol. Let me read this for you guys. If it's the same Andrew Klein, and many researchers out there say it is, he was appointed to the Department of Justice HTP unit. Well, what is the HTP unit? That's the Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit within the criminal section of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Many are suggesting it's the same Andrew Klein involved in this Comet Ping Pong, Besta Pizza, they're on the same street, and the Podesta brothers, and they're all in on it. And
Oh, yeah.
it's shocking if this is the same Andrew Klein, Gonz. But
Well,
according
well, I
to Tom DeLay, we shouldn't be surprised because the Justice Department wants to legalize 12 perversions.
Yeah, I mean, and this verifies a lot of the WikiLeaks lingo, right? About pizza and all kinds of code that they were using. It had food analogies and everything. It's just disgusting stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable that this is happening. And boy, this is the kind of thing, again, because the public at large has been sort of psychologically traumatized to a large extent by the mainstream media and sort of again, it's spiritual, but also, just this reliance on what is fed through, the corporate entities. And I think, I mentioned this on my Facebook page, but I keep bringing it up, and I think people have brought this up. This is well known, but back in 2012, basically, government issued propaganda became legalized, right? So now what we're seeing through these corporate outlets are very strongly tied to political interests, and that means, the people that are running it has ties to all these pedophilia things and everything. That's what's being fed to our public, right? That's what people are looking at. The spirit behind it is this terrible, awful stuff that goes on. And so obviously the people are sort of lost to this. And when the truth is told, it's almost like they can't handle it because, they've been conditioned to be so asleep to it. And that's why I kind of bring it back to, we got to help some of these people out. And I think your channel and stuff and others, are doing a good job with that. But, the Podesta stuff, and here's the facts in terms of what some of these folks believe. And you talked about these are predators, and I said, they're victims. And there's no contradiction there because what happens, they fall victim to the lie, and that turns them into predators.
Right.
Okay, and that turns them against your fellow man, and that's what we're seeing here. Almost as if they are spiritual agents of the enemy. That's what they become. And so, yes, they are predators, but they first fell victim to the lie to become predators.
Right.
And whether that be through, family ties or bloodlines or whatever, I think there's more intricacy there that I think we're even kind of looking at in the alternative world of, researching some of these fringe areas that we're starting to understand because of all the stuff in quantum science and everything else. But in terms of the predator element, they believe that they gain energy. And this is the same thing, the same sort of Luciferian thought that is taught through, the same corruption of, pedophilia we see in the Catholic Church and the Vatican. Same ideologies, that there is energy that can be drawn from particular acts and from particular agents, so to speak, let's say. When I say agents, let's say a young boy. There's tiers of there's written documents from some of these elites that I've studied, looked at, and I don't need to look at a lot of it. I've found enough to know that there's real documents out there that list things that say, hey, you want someone that's a boy, that's intelligent, that's younger, you will harness better energy from them. That kind of stuff is what is driving this. And yeah, you talked about hubris. I mean, it goes beyond that. I think it's just again, it has to be a really deep deception. Otherwise, why would you ever think this is good?
Right.
Why would you ever think that this sort of activity is good? And it's almost like, oh, it's good for me.
Right.
And that ultimate pride, that blindness that comes from the pride, is what we're seeing here. And that's the exact same thing. If you go back to the Garden of Eden, it's the same thing, where Eve saw that the fruit was good. After Satan told the lie, she believed it. She saw it was good, right? And that was the deception. That's exactly what we're seeing here with the elite.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's these 7 deadly sins that these people embrace, and they get off on the pride in it's ego, isn't it? It's their own human hubris. It's the love of flesh that causes them to behave this way. I've been posting some interesting videos over at the Phaser lately. People who have had near-death experiences and said that they visited God or that met Jesus and were sent back into their bodies, and it changed them forever. Some of them were not Christians to begin with, or were very tepid Christians, and it changed their lives forever, and they say they will go to their grave telling this story, and they're no longer afraid of death. On the other hand, I've posted some videos where people say that and it's documented, died on the operating table for like an hour and were brought back to life, and they visited hell. And they describe it as being the most horrific, lonely despair, a complete and total separation from God, that it is the absolute most nightmarish thing that these people would not even wish on any of their worst enemies. And I think that these people, these pedophiles that are running society, and I mean, look at Jimmy Savile over the BBC commentator, the BBC personality, who was friends with Prince Charles and was knighted by the Queen. A known pedophile, a child abuser, a child rapist, was into necrophilia for decades, Gonz, and was protected by those in power. And now we're seeing the same thing here with these Podesta emails, and I just want to make this point, guys. This isn't hyperbole. We know that $13 billion is missing from the Clinton Foundation. $13 billion just that was meant for the people of Haiti after the earthquake, not to mention the other billions missing. And the Clintons are connected by these WikiLeaks emails to Laura Silsby, who is supposedly a missionary, who was then jailed for trying to smuggle 33 children out of Haiti into the Dominican Republic. Okay? And the Clintons came to her aid. And so these people, now everybody's believing, Gonz, that what's really going on with the Clinton Foundation in Haiti is a child trafficking network. And we know that Bill Clinton has visited Jeffrey Epstein's private island some 22, 24, 26 times, something like that. And Epstein is a known convicted pedophile. It's just outlandish. It's absolutely beyond. I guess one thing we can do is thank God Hillary Clinton's not back in the White House, because maybe some of this stuff comes to an end. Maybe the Clintons get prosecuted for some of this, and by extension, the Podestas as well.
Yeah, and that's the level of evil that I think a lot of people are praying against, and that's probably why we have a Donald Trump presidency in front of us, is because a lot of people saw just how evil this is, how terrible this is. And you know, the move of God is powerful. You can't say that God doesn't move in these situations. You can't limit his power. And I think, you know, there's a positive here that comes out of it. Now, it doesn't mean we're in the clear. I think we have, you know, a lot of people are saying we got to hold Trump's feet to the fire, all this stuff. And I agree with that. We got to keep watching what he does with the UN and technology. There's all kinds of topics where, you know, I think can be potentially, you know, sort of counter to, or at least help continue the building of a sort of a new world order system, especially in the area of technology. I'm very curious to see how that all unfolds. But yeah, it's and you talked about the near-death experience element of it. And, you know, we did an episode on Canary Cry Radio. It was episode 71. It's called Near-Death Experiences, where we document one of each. We document, you know, one person who visited what she believed was a way to heaven. It was actually on the way to heaven, so to speak. An angel was holding her. And because of the petition of the people, which was the prayer, she was brought back. And another story where a soldier and a military guy went to hell and said it was the outer darkness. And he was basically being tortured by a demon until he was rescued by an angel and taken out of there and given a second chance, that kind of thing. And you know, you hear all these stories about Muslims coming in droves to Jesus through dreams. You know, it's just there's stuff out there. The spiritual thing is real. You just have to look for it. It's out there. The stories are there. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that, especially the elite, they don't want that. They want to corrupt that. And that's why we've seen, I think, you know, the corruption of the Catholic Church, the whole thing there, Rome and everything has just been a corruption from the beginning. But, you know, just in terms of the pedophilia being the piece of evidence that really shows the dark, you know, terrible things that go on behind the scenes. And if you think about it, yeah, you're right. You know, the Vatican, pedophilia. Mm-hmm. England, right? Pedophilia. Clintons, pedophilia. There's a common thread here. And then you look into pedophilia and its sort of spiritual implications behind the scenes, and you find very, very dark satanic stuff. And that's why, you know, Chris White, who I owe, you know, all the, you know, accolades to in terms of getting me started on YouTube and podcasting and everything. He really inspired me to do that. And he was, you know, he's featured on the first film, Age of Deceit. And he says that you kick down every door of government, politics, this hierarchy, you always find Satanism at the end of the line. And it's almost like, it's almost surreal. You know, and I think you're sort of normal people, a person out there, if you're a secular researcher and you're listening to this and you're kind of like, yeah, you know, it's there. This is what I hear a lot of this. It's what they believe. So, you know, it doesn't matter what you believe. It's what they believe. And it's partly true. It's definitely true. But at the same time, it's like, okay, they believe this and they look at the power they have over people. There is this sort of exchange happening here of, you know, leveraging power, leveraging control over the masses, and there's a price to pay almost in this world, this fallen system that we live in, to be sort of held up as a leader or a king over society. And you know, it's almost like playing God. It's almost proving that we can't play God. You know, no human can play God because in our fallen state, it's just a corruption. It's just the corruption trickles down and spreads, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, and before we talk about CERN, because I think what's going on at CERN is definitely part of this and part of the spiritual warfare, in my opinion. We can talk about that. I know you've probably studied it more than just about anybody out there on YouTube, but I just want to read this. It's one of my favorite quotes from the Bible, Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." And thank God, Gonz, these people are being exposed. And before we wrap up on this Podesta email thing, the Comet Ping Pong establishment in D.C. is owned by James Alefantis. He's the boyfriend of David Brock, who works at Media Matters. There's a Soros connection there because of Media Matters. And, you know, what's really strange and disturbing to we who've been researching this about Comet Pizza, Alefantis has been posting dozens of sexually suggestive pictures of toddlers and infants on his Instagram. The walls at Comet Ping Pong have lots of creepy sexual pictures by Kim Noble, I guess, an artist. And I'm reading this actually from, you guys can read this yourselves, Podesta Pizza Pedophiles and Discomforting Coincidences. That's at the Anonymous Conservative. And it just goes on and on and on. And these people do appear to have a secret language, and they do appear to have what look like torture rooms, Gonz, a completely isolated cement room in which some of the commenters on Instagram, after Alefantis posted the picture, said, "Oh, looks like fun. Murder room? Hashtag murder? Just spray it down when you're done." I mean, I think this is what they're doing. And again, it speaks to the horror of the Marina Abramovich art, in which what appear to be dead bodies bathing in blood are actually cakes, and they enjoy cutting the cakes and eating the proxy bodies. It's so dark and so satanic, and it needs to be flushed out. People are going to stay on this Podesta email thing as it relates to Comet Ping Pong. It's being called Pizzagate. You can search for great people doing this work on Twitter with hashtag Pizzagate. We just need to get to the bottom of it, and these people need to be brought to justice. There's so much more here. I'll leave some links below in the more info section. All right, enough on that. Before I lose you, can we just talk about your thoughts as it relates to CERN? I find CERN so fascinating, Gonz, because, again, most of my friends, neighbors, and colleagues, most of the people in this country don't even know CERN exists. They don't know what it is. They've never heard of it. And it happens to be the largest, most complicated, probably the most expensive piece of technology ever built by humankind. And we don't really know what they're up to with it. I don't think their cover story is legit.
Yeah, their cover story actually gives us a lot of information about what they're really doing. Lots of physicists over the years since they completed CERN and have been working on it, especially this recent run with, you know, colliding the particles and charging up the tera-electron volts and everything else. They've openly stated that basically, and theoretically, if certain parameters come into play, they can rip a hole in space-time, and we should be able to see into the other side, so to speak. This sounds like science fiction. This sounds like absolute craziness, but this is the same people that we talked about, and the connection is truly astounding. Is that, you know, we have the blood sacrifices and everything else that we see, the pedophilia, all these terrible things, the connection point, the consistency that leads into the realm of the Gothard Tunnel ceremony, which runs right by CERN. That whole tunnel where they did the satanic ceremony runs right next to CERN. And you know, then you have CERN here, them talking about, oh, we open portals, and there was even this mock sort of sacrifice that was done on the steps of the statue of Shiva, the destroyer. That's right. And you know, a lot of people, I said it was a hoax in that I don't think the killing was real, but you know, there have been reports from others like Richie from Boston, who suggests that the origin of the video, the guy who published the video, is allegedly dead. So we don't know. I mean, it's hard to really vet that stuff, but that's the kind of craziness that's going on.
But do we think the ritual actually happened? I mean, I don't think there's a way to hoax that video. It appears that a ritual, even if it was a mock sacrifice, happened right there in front of the statue of Shiva at CERN.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, you have to realize with a lot of these secret societies. Skull and Bones is a prime example of that, with a lot of the president, people running for president being a part of that over the years. They do this kind of stuff, mock sacrifices. There might not be, real bloodshed in some of these rituals, but they definitely do it. They definitely come together to perform those motions. And regardless of whether it was a hoax in terms of, it was fake, somebody faked it or whatever, that the action was done, the deed sort of was done regardless. So there's that tie there. And then you have, again, these scientists and physicists saying, we're potentially looking at opening portals into the other dimension. And what does that mean? Where does that connection tie in? And there seems to be, when you look at propaganda, right, and we've talked about who controls all that, it's the same people trickled down through different tentacles. But when you see that, it's clear that they're pushing for some sort of dimensional rift in the media. You see a lot of it. We saw Tomorrowland kind of display that for the kids. Actually, a lot of kids are being exposed to this idea. I pointed out how Disney XD, every single one of their cartoons, I'm talking every single one, has a portal that the characters travel through.
Yeah, Legos. There's a Lego game, a Lego video game, which
Dimensions,
is absolutely CERN, 100%.
It's
mimicking
absolutely CERN.
And these parents are buying these toys, and the parents don't even know CERN exists.
Yeah. It's astounding, and these kids are being conditioned to see some of this stuff, I think, in our lifetime, which sounds just absolutely ridiculous, right? It sounds science fiction, but the more sort of science and technology progresses, it's like the comment or the quote by Arthur C. Clarke, the advances of technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, that's what we're seeing. Biblically, prophetically, we were told that there's going to be sorcery in the end times that deceives many. And we're seeing, I think, a lot of that. And ultimately, this supernatural stuff that's going to happen manifest. And that's really the interesting thing here, is that the spiritual world has been here all along, but it's been hidden. It's been behind this veil. And what the elite are trying to do is to open the abyss again, to allow these entities to freely roam and, hail their leader, which is the fallen one, the heavenly rebellion against God, the creator. And, their fate is already determined. And that's what hell is, really. It's made for the devil and his angels. It's not made for man, but unfortunately, those who buy into the rebellion here on earth and they sell their souls out, they're going to go where their spiritual source came from, which is, the dark side, the evil, and it's going to be punished. And that's the thing, too, we have to remember, and you talked about maybe seeing some justice here, and this has to come to an end. Absolutely. And, if we see some people get arrested, and there would be a sense of justice in a way. But we have to remember also that, with my particular belief, the Christian worldview, there is ultimate justice coming. There is, and the reason why God comes back with his wrath, right? The wrath of God that's described in the book of Revelation is because there's judgment. There is a real judgment that's coming to this world. And it's a just God. He's not just mad because we didn't listen. There's justice that needs to be done. And when you look at something like this, how deep this corruption goes, not just in illegal activity, but this sort of stuff with spirit cooking, blood sacrifices, pedophilia, all the marks of deep occult Satanism. There is going to be judgment. There's got to be something that evens it out. There's got to be something that brings truth. And let me leave you with this. You talked about Ephesians 6:12 or 6:11 and 6:12. You go back one chapter, Ephesians 5:11. It says this: "Take no part in unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them." And interestingly, in verse 12, it says, "For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret." And man, is that true. with everything that's come to light here.
Yeah.
It's shameful to discuss all this stuff: blood sacrifice, pedophilia, taking kids out of Haiti for a pedophile. I mean, it is shameful. It's hard to talk about it because it's so shameful.
Yeah.
But it says here, right here in Ephesians, that we need to expose this stuff. And I think this is the move of God over this last election cycle. Regardless of whether Trump does what he says he'll do, that kind of stuff is to be seen. But in terms of the victory of this stuff being exposed and having this opportunity to really spread some truth, I think that is divine intervention.
Yeah, me too. And I'll just say this too. I want your thoughts on it before we let you go. CERN made a film called Symmetry, and I want to ask you about that in a second, your thoughts, because I think it really brings to life everything we're talking about and what's really going on at CERN, what they're really up to and what they want to do, break the veil, is shown in CERN's movie. Very expensive, well done, very beautiful movie they did that's very occult, called Symmetry, and probably most of our listeners have watched it, so I want your thoughts on that in a second, but I'm going to just say this. I mentioned the Podesta brothers. We're talking about the pedophilia rings and the evil at the highest levels. There will be judgment. There will be ultimate judgment. And but your thoughts on CERN's film Symmetry? That tells us everything they're up to, doesn't it?
Yeah, the interesting thing about this circular motion that is just on display, it represents the Large Hadron Collider and the 27-mile ring that they have underground, where they basically collide these particles at near close to light speed, and it's this circular motion is interesting because it has, again, this tie to this other dimension, this opening, and if you think that this is all fake, and if you don't think that this is being pushed into the public, if anybody saw Doctor Strange just recently, what is the motion that they use to open a portal? And I'll just leave it there for those of you who saw the movie. It's not a coincidence, okay? This is already being pushed out there. The Ouroboros is another symbol, the snake that eats his own tail. This is an occultic symbol that represents, rebirth, and that's what they're kind of trying to do with this whole thing, with the new Atlantis and everything that ties into the New World Order system. And again, it goes back to the spiritual element, guiding hand. They've been trying to establish this for a long time. And the CERN movie, the Symmetry thing, is really, again, it ties back to, and I've mentioned this in my research, to the days of the Tower of Babel. And what they were trying to do, I think, in the days of Babel, was to reach heaven, not so much just reach, up above us, but this other dimension, and where God resides, a spiritual dimension. And it's the same sort of hubris that was in mankind then is the same thing that's leading these people to do what they're doing with CERN now. And putting in a production like Symmetry is part of their agenda, is part of their way of publicly showing what they're doing without admitting it, hard with words and everything like that. It's showing us. And that's one of their methods, is they flaunt it right in front of our face. And a lot of us are, too distracted to really know what's going on. But that's kind of our job, is to say, hey, guys, this is real. This stuff is really happening. And so we have to be aware of it. We have to be alert. If something happens, something crazy happens, some portal opens and some entities come through and just craziness, it would be against God's providence, in a sense, for me to not, as a watchman, say that this kind of stuff might happen. I'm not saying that it will, okay? We don't know that. None of us know the day or the hour. None of us knows exactly what's going to happen in the future. But this is what the hidden occult elite are trying to do. They're trying to create this bridge to some spiritual world where these entities reside, and they want to manifest probably some sort of mass possession of levels, great levels of populations, big levels of populations. And that's where the social engineering aspect of it comes in. And again, my point is that it all ties together. That what you see with this video, if you go and look for it, it's the Symmetry video, is this occultic dance with the devil, basically, is what's going on. And again, it's clear to us who've been looking at it. And the Podesta stuff didn't even surprise me. I mean, I've been so jaded with like what's really going on behind the scenes almost, that I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, pedophilia, yeah, I'm not surprised. It's like, it's shocking to a sense, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, if the patterns hold true, then yeah, of course, it's no surprise.
Their
But again,
abominations don't even surprise you at this point.
oh no, it really doesn't. And at the same time, though, again, the public, it's hard for them to swallow something like this. You know, it's hard for them to digest just how bad and evil this stuff is. Because you know, if it can ruin your day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To look at this stuff, to think about this stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, but the truth needs to be put out there, and it is now.
Right.
But again, it's a great opportunity to share the gospel because you know, it's like, hey, this stuff is real, and so is the good side. It's not really all just negative. There is a positive message here with the gospel message. So there's hope at the end of it. So I guess that's my final thing, is that there is hope. You know, that in Jesus Christ, that his death and resurrection, that was a spiritual event that caused a ripple. It was a reversal of the corruption that's on this planet. And there is power there. There is truth there that exposes this darkness. And everybody knows, you know, it's sort of that whole idea of C.S. Lewis saying, you know, you don't know, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't remember the exact quote, but you wouldn't know that a line is crooked unless you understood what a straight line was. And a lot of us have that sort of moral sense. And I think the fact that it would disturb you, if someone mentions this and you're like, I don't even want to look at it, it's just so disturbing, that alone is proof that this stuff is real, that it does affect the world, that there's real effect happening here. And it should be addressed, and we have to deal with it. And the more that we deal with it as a human civilization, the better off we'll be, because we'll be able to purge that stuff out. And hopefully, we'll see some of that with this next presidency. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, and you know, just a couple of final words here. I completely agree with you across the board, and I would say this, you know, as it relates to people waking up to the hardcore evil that is being practiced on this planet. People that are listening to this interview that aren't familiar with CERN would think we're crazy, or if they don't know about the Podesta Pizzagate emails, they would think that that's nonsense. And these are the same people that would say, well, 9/11 couldn't have been a false flag, as you people say, because nobody would be that evil. There's nobody that would practice that sort of evil and kill people on purpose. And it's the same thing with these Podesta emails and the Pizzagate and the Comet Ping Pong and the Kill Room. It's an abomination to even think for a moment that there are people on this planet so evil and so willing to have sex with children, and in some cases, as suggested by this email, sacrifice children and kill children. It's an evil and an abomination just beyond our expectation, because we're wired correctly. And there's people in this world that have been absolutely deceived. People like Marina Abramovich, and they need to be exposed for their abominations, because you're right, Gonz, there is justice. You know, at the very end, if there's not justice on this planet, there is justice in the afterlife. And I want to leave people with this soundbite. The founder of the Satanic Church, Anton LaVey, is said to have found himself on his deathbed, getting a glimpse of something he didn't expect, and disturbed him very, very greatly. And I want to play this soundbite for you guys right now before we say goodbye to Gonz.
And he was getting ready to die and pass on his powers and that. And on his deathbed, he must have got some revelation or an angelic appearance or something. And he went into shock, and he said, oh my, oh my, what have I done? He said, there's something very wrong. There's something very wrong. There's something very wrong.
Wow.
And his whole life had been spent propagating these satanic beliefs, getting everyone to believe, establishing official organizations for Satanism. And then at the end of his life, he gets this light that comes to him, and everything that he built, he realized was wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's where Marina Abramovich is headed, and the Podesta brothers too, if they don't repent. And you know, we need to bring them to justice, guys. We have to bring these people to justice. Anybody that would victimize and hurt a child, it's beyond me, Gonz.
Yeah, and you know, as difficult as this may sound, you know, perhaps justice on this planet for some of these folks is, you know, is something that can save their souls. And I know it's hard for us to sort of believe that they have souls, you know, but And I don't know that for sure. Obviously, they may have sold their soul to the devil. Period. That there's no redemption. But Scripture says that God wants to see all come, to be saved. So, on that premise, as long as they have breath here, I would say there's maybe an opportunity. Who knows? It would depend on the repentance of their heart, and stuff like that. It's between them and God. But that's kind of the hope, right? That hey, they realize how terrible it is, and they have an opportunity to repent. And uh, you know, it would be a shock, wouldn't it, to find some of these folks in heaven?
Yeah, it certainly would. But I guess there is hope for them if they're willing to repent. And I don't know how many of them are. I think they're seized by love of pride, ego, and power. They're seized by bloodlust. And I don't think there's much hope for redemption of these people. It is between them and God, isn't it, Gonz? It's between them
Yeah,
and God.
it is. It is. And if we have more time, I'd love to dig into this more. But one of the things I didn't bring up was, and you discussed this so well on this channel, is the economics of it. And and I just want to mention that the levers, the way they're able to control this, all this dark magic stuff. Yeah, but the ultimate magic, in a sense, is money, is the economy. It is a sort of a psychological tool that, it's a control mechanism. It's really a theoretical construct, right? Money isn't really real anymore. It's not backed by anything. Obviously, there is gold and precious metals and everything else, but it has controlled populations. It controls societies. It's able to mobilize people, destabilize nations. I mean, it is a tool. It is a magic wand that has been used and abused by these elite folks, the same folks who do all these terrible things. So that's how it becomes. That's how it affects us, as just normal citizens. The wand being moved one way or the other can really affect our day-to-day lives in terms of what we go through. And that's why I think we need to have a voice, or at least speak out on this stuff, because it does make a difference. Ultimately, it comes back around. Even though this stuff might feel like, oh, it's out there, it's them, it's the elite, whatever. It does affect each individual. It affects us personally, as well as our communities and our society. So, hopefully, again, there's some positives that come out of this. And I'm trying to stay optimistic here, with the whole maybe there's salvation for some of these folks, because otherwise it's just really depressing and dark.
Yeah, it is. And I do think it all ties together. And Gonz, your voice has been such an inspiration to me. I really beg the audience, if you haven't subscribed, by all means, subscribe to Face Like the Sun. It's just the best videos you're going to get on a daily basis.
Oh, I appreciate that. And keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference. Again, it was a steady hand for me to come back to SGT Report to hear about your thoughts on all the stuff going on out there with the crazy election cycle. So appreciate you having me on.
I really appreciate it, Gonz. Is there anything else we can do to support you? Are you working on any new documentaries you want to make us aware of? Any books you're writing?
Yeah, there's a couple projects going on. There's a supernatural documentary that I wanted to make that's sort of morphing into Age of Deceit 3. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's in the works. I'm putting together, I've already written a book that's not published, but I'm planning to sort of revisit it and make them into videos per chapter or something like that. It's about the secret space program and the history of how that was even funded in this breakaway civilization that's behind everything. It's fascinating too when you start looking at all the stuff happening right now with the Silicon Valley going nuts with the Trump election, seceding California. That all comes from the same hubris as the breakaway civilization concept of, oh, we're better than these other people. We need to progress society. That mantra is the same thing as this transhumanist future tech world that they're trying to create here. So, those are interesting aspects of it. The whole space angle is definitely interesting with the weapons and everything else that could happen that I suspect might have something to do with the Antichrist final beast system and the wars that it is able to conduct in the world. Who can make war with him, the Antichrist, the beast in the system? So there's some unbelievable military power that we'll see that might have to do with space technologies. So, those are all things that I think we need to keep an eye on as the next 4 years rolls around. But that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to post daily videos, although I can't always pull that off. It's difficult to run a YouTube channel, as you probably know. It's challenging. It's very time consuming. There's a lot of research and editing and even writing involved. But yeah, I appreciate all the subscribers there already, and if you want to check it out, please do. And thank you for allowing me to come on and talk about some of my thoughts here with everything.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time and your perspective. And if you don't mind, in the next few months, could we get you back on and talk about the secret space program and your research? Because that's right up my alley. I've talked to others about it. I really love Joseph P. Farrell and Catherine Austin Fitt's take on it. The trillions missing from the Pentagon.
Yep.
The UFO sightings, how many of them are terrestrial in origin? It's very, very fascinating to me, and we do post a lot of material like that over at thephaser.com as well. So if you'd be willing to come back on, it'd be really a fascinating conversation to have.
Sure, anytime.
Okay.
Let me know.
Okay. Well, guys, check out Gonz's channel on YouTube. It's Face Like the Sun, and he's the one and only Gonz Shimura. And guys, thank you for tuning in. We very much appreciate you liking this video and sharing it with others if it meant anything to you. And we very much appreciate your support at sgtreport.com. And as I mentioned, check us out at thephaser.com and, of course, thelibertymill.com. Real news 24/7. Have a wonderful week. Thanks, guys.